let's start off with my first question. What is this job that I was applying for, and what is instructional design itself? So this is the definition according to Wikipedia, but my instructional design senses tell me that if I start with this definition and go through this, I'm going to lose a lot of my audience. So we're going to go with the simplified version that I have put together. So what is instructional design specifically? We start with the goal, because what are you doing? The goal of instructional design is to make the learning as accessible as possible to the learner. If you kind of just know this, everything else falls into place. So as an instructional designer, you are there to make the learning as accessible as possible for your learner. How do you do that? What do you mean by accessible? Accessible means that they understand what you are teaching them. It makes sense to them. They can pick it up easily. And for that, you also need to know your learner. Who is your learner? What do they need to know? What do they already know? And what is their motivation to learn? So essentially, if you think about it, at any stage in the instructional design process, if you're concentrating on how do I make this learning as accessible as possible for my learners, you're going to pretty much get to the place you need to be at. So that's our goal. That's what we're doing at any phase in the process, at any level. As a consultant, after 18 years of experience, I'm still thinking, how do I make this learning as accessible as possible for my learner? I'm dealing with it at a wider level, but that's still my goal. So your goal will never change as an instructional designer. And how do we do that? So I've listed 3 main tools that we use as instructional designers that kind of help us to meet this goal. So content, number 1. Content is basically your words, your information, your explanations that you can give. So it's how you write that content, how you kind of present this content, how much of content do I need, how do I design this effectively to be able to make that learning as accessible as possible. So for a very quick example was what I just did. I thought about, okay, here's the detailed definition from Wikipedia, and I could have broken that down and I could have explained it, but I thought about it and I was like, no, that does not make my learning accessible. That's content, but it's not the right type of content for this audience who are mostly new to this field. So let me simplify it, let me rewrite it, let me come up with a direct way of explaining it as much as I can. So that's what you're doing as an instructional designer, how to make this content accessible. The second thing that I've put down is technology. I've called it technology, but you can also look at any kind of facilities that are available to you. So can anybody give me examples of any kind of technology that can be used for learning, to make learning accessible to your learners in any way? Anybody? So I don't want to talk the whole session, so people have to answer things.
Short videos.
Yes.
Informational videos.
Absolutely. So videos are a great way of training. And it's not only training, right? I mean, videos are used to convey information. What information you're conveying could be like, I don't know, tips to look hot today, but it could also be, learning material or things that, like are for a wider learning purpose. But videos are an absolutely great way of, teaching. What else? Think wide. What is the simplest form of technology that people use for, learning? Yeah, so your mobile is the platform that you use and you convey your information through your mobile. Absolutely.
Websites.
Websites, yes. So websites, it could be just HTML pages, a flow of information. Yes, Johnsy, absolutely. So games are a great way of training. So if you think about it, most of the games, you're learning something or the other. Any game that you play, they're kind of building, concepts. They're helping you to build frameworks that you then use going forward. So games are a great way of training as well. There was something else that came. Simulations. So simulations are when you explain, tools and so on. So yes, even simpler than that.
Someone said PPTs.
PPTs, yes, PPTs, that's where I was going with the even simpler than that. So PPTs are, again, very easy, very effective. You could have a trainer explaining PPTs. You could share, more information in PPTs that people could go through at their own pace. PDFs, Word documents, a really nicely designed document explaining things well. I mean, that's technology, and that's being used to present and to teach. We even have classroom setups. So I know it doesn't come exactly in technology, but classroom setups, virtual meetings, any of these things as well that you're using to train. I count all this in technology. So all of this is stuff that you can use to then make learning as accessible as possible for the learner. And I've broken down the last one into activities. So I mean, this was my own take, but I feel like activities stand on their own as, a very important component of your learning design and your learning experience. So again, any examples of learning activities? Think wide. It could be online, it could be offline, it could be virtual. Pre-tests, yeah. So quizzes, tests, questions, lots of types of questions that you can use, which are really effective as activities. Scenario-based learning, yeah. So scenario-based learning is when you have a situation. You put a situation down and you say, what would you do? Or what should the person do? Or what did they do wrong? Again, it's an activity, and you're getting people to learn through that activity. Thought starter question. So, Rochelle, this one I only taught you, huh? I'm pretty sure. But yes,
Yes.
questions where you kind of, get people involved before you get into the learning. So you're saying, did you know this? Have you what would you do in this situation? And it's just an open-ended question, and then you lead into the learning from there, where you're getting people to kind of start thinking through their prior experiences to learn. And then if you think about other activities, games are a type of activity as well. It could be online games, it could be, in-person workshop games, where you have discussion forums. You have, people even play board games in workshops. So there are a whole lot of activities, role plays. So this is an essential part of your learning experience. So I don't think any learning experience will really be effective if it is just plain presentation. You need to have involvement, you need to have activity, and this is how you actually apply what you're learning as well. It can't just be that you learn and it sticks in your head and suddenly you're an expert at it. You have to go on practicing and you have to go on applying, and that's part of any good learning experience. It just occurred to me that we do not have any activities in this session, but think of this as an introductory one, and no one is going to be an expert at instructional design at the end of this session. And the third thing is that instructional design, it's not by fluke, it's not by matka that you actually kind of are able to deliver on the outcomes. A lot of us learned it a little bit experientially, where people did not teach us the process upfront necessarily. But there is a process, there is a way of going about it. And at a very high level, it starts with defining your learning outcomes. So what do you want to achieve? So when you say, I want this learning to be accessible, what is it that you want to achieve? Who is your target audience? Again, if you don't know who you're training, how will you make sure that the learning is relevant and accessible to them? Then you design your instructional solution, which is how do I achieve this? And then you develop the learning assets, which could be whatever kind of modules, components, PDFs, games, workshops, anything that you want, they all count as learning assets. So this is overall what instructional design is. This is what I've learned over the last 18 years. It did not come up front, but I feel like this kind of summarizes what instructional design is, what you're trying to achieve through instructional design. So let me move forward now. So when I went for my interview, like my first question was, what is this job that I'm applying for? And luckily, my boss was quite willing to discuss this. And why was he willing to discuss it? Because he had that test that I had done. And he was willing to hire me on the basis of the test that I had done primarily. So he was already like, it's fine. And he looked at the test. He had already seen the test. In my interview, he didn't ask me any technical questions. He didn't ask me anything about instructional design. It would not have helped because I didn't know, obviously, anything about it. But he talked to me about books. He was like, what do you read? What do you enjoy reading? Then he asked me a couple of questions about a book that I said that I liked. He said, what about this? But what if it was like that? He explored my thought process. He explored how I looked at things, and he explored whether I'm interested in different types of topics. And this for me is what I think what comes together as the base skill sets that anybody would look for in an instructional designer. And if you're interested in instructional design, you should kind of look at these and see if they work. So the first one is language and communication skills. Language is your arsenal here, because and written, like language skills primarily, because you are writing whatever you are communicating, whatever learning you are conveying. It is mostly through words. Either it's text, or it could be audio scripts that could get recorded, but you are not delivering the training directly. This training is being delivered via an online medium, or maybe through a trainer as well, but you are scripting it. So having a strong command of the language that you are training in is very important. So for me, this was always English, because I worked with companies that were dealing with multinational organizations, and for a long time instructional design was primarily English based. Now actually there's like a lot of push with the ed tech, and converting a lot of the training in India into online medium as well. So a lot of regional languages are also used now in instructional design. It depends on what the primary mode of scripting is. So often we have multiple languages that we are, converting our content into, translating our content into. So we'll make, but our base is English, and then we get translation agencies to kind of translate it into other languages. The second thing is logical thinking and a problem-solving mindset. So what happens is, if you look at instructional design, you're dealing with content, you're trying to figure out the best way to train it, you're trying to figure out, what makes sense, how does it all come together? And I look at those a lot as, one of my things was, it's common sense. So you look at it and how does it kind of come together in your head? And the second thing was that I look at them as problems that I need to solve. So that kind of approach to it really helps you to make sense of all the bits of information that you receive, and all the different constraints that you have to deal with as well. Interest in understanding and learning new things, that for me was the hook. But it's really critical, because you never know what you're going to be teaching, and you need to be interested in learning new things. One day it could be, I remember one of them, which I got fairly early on, was reinsurance. And I was like, what is reinsurance? And I have never used reinsurance. Reinsurance is when you have an insurer insures another insurance company. So it's such a big risk that I'm taking that I need somebody else to like share that risk. So then I get reinsurance. I will never deal with reinsurance. I will never, be at that level where I'm dealing with like millions or billions of dollars in insurance risk. But it was interesting to me to figure out how it works, what it is. So you have to be interested in random subjects, because you're not picking what you're going to be training people on. Attention to detail, ability to deal with volumes of content. It can there can be a lot, and sometimes you just have to stick in it and get it done. And you need to be able to focus. So that's important. And the last one that I've put, ability to use technology to write, present, and source information. So you don't need to know coding. You don't need to actually, like create screens and so on. But you do need to have a comfort level, because it's the main thing that we're using, right? To present our content, to teach. So you need, and it goes on changing, right? You could be using one type of technology today, and you could get a completely different type of authoring tool that you would need to pick up in the next project. So you need to have that at least level of confidence and I'll figure it out and ability to figure it out to be able to do well. So I'm going to pause here. I've still got more content, of course, but any questions on this? Because I know a lot of you, we've talked about it as, are you looking at this as a career change, switch? So any questions on, what are the base competencies or skills to kind of, that may work in the instructional design field?
Hello.
Yeah. Hi, Harshika.
I am, by education, I'm a company secretary, but I have been working as a freelance content writer since the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay.
And now I am, thinking about getting into instructional design as a career. So, what would you suggest that I primarily work on if I were to build a career out of it?
Okay. So
how do I prepare myself for this, basically?
So let me put a pin in that question. I have it on, one of my last slides. So I'll spend a little time on that. But that's a good question, absolutely. So I'll get to that because I've got a slide for it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, so let me move forward. So when I started then so Tushar hired me. My first job was with this company called Brain Visa. I have no idea why you would have an idea why they decided to call it Brain and Visa, but I would have thought that they could have come up with a cooler sounding name, but that was what it was. It was one of the e-learning companies in Pune, a fairly large one at that point of time. There were about 3 or 4 biggish ones. And so I joined this team of about like 20 people at that point of time. And I was given a project and told start. So my first project was literally just writing descriptions of images for accessibility reasons. So they had these courses and they needed that it should be accessible for visually impaired people. And they had this screen reader that would read things out. And I just had to write descriptions of images. And many of those images were just like icons. So I spent like my first 2 weeks writing a visual of a house, a visual of a tree, but except that there were a few infographics. So there I got to explore a little bit of my creative side. But then after that, I got into actual storyboarding. So storyboarding is when you're scripting the content that is actually your learning content that you are training people on. So if you're doing videos, then storyboarding is the script for your videos. If you're doing e-learning courses, then storyboarding is all your text that's going to come on the screen, or a web page. That's all the text that's going to come. So it's the direct communication with your learners. So that's what you're writing. So what are the activities involved in storyboarding as the first level of instructional design task? So you are given a kind of an outline that you're working with and some source content that you're working with. You don't have to do this from scratch. The thing about instructional design is that we don't claim to be subject matter experts. So if you tell me I need to do a course on reinsurance, I'm not like, oh, I know reinsurance, I can train people. I'm like, I know learning and I will figure out the content from the source content that you provide to me. So it could be documents, it could be, maybe previous training materials from different sources and subject matter experts that you're working with to kind of fill in gaps. So you've already got your source content, you've got a content outline, and you need to create the storyboards. So the first thing to do is kind of do some research to understand the subject and content focus area. So one of the projects that I worked on was, again, back in the day, was for ConocoPhillips, and that was called Drilling 101. So the purpose of the course was for engineers who were joining ConocoPhillips and who were going to be working in their drilling facilities. And they wanted to kind of create a baseline of information and make sure that they understood how the company does things. So Drilling 101 as a foundational course. The thing is, what for them is Drilling 101, for Lisa, who is like a arts graduate in English literature was not really 101. I mean, already the source content was going way above my head. I was like, what? So I had to research. So I Googled it. I found how stuff works. And they explained very nicely how drilling works. And it was super interesting. I still remember like the discovery that, oh, you just have to drill down and you hit the oil, but you don't have to suck it up. Once you hit it, it comes up by itself. I was really impressed by that like discovery, and I still remember it after 15 years. So you have to research, you have to figure out the background because you're teaching a subject that you don't already know. So research, figuring it out, being able to like just be a little creative with where am I looking for it, YouTube videos, somebody's explanations, whatever it is, but to orient yourself on the subject or the topic that you're teaching. And then you plan, how am I going to teach this? Then, so scripting content, and you would script it in different ways if you're, if it's just information that you want to directly present, maybe data, facts, figures, this is the capital of this, that maybe you just want to directly explain. If it's a concept, it's something that you want to convince or explain, then you explain it. You use your words, or maybe you use a video or an animation or something to explain it. Demonstrate is to show people how it works. Little scenarios, you give little examples when you're talking about things. Like when I'm saying that you need to research, I'm giving you an example of where I needed to research. So that's a mode of demonstration. Connecting things. If I have like 3 pieces that all kind of come together, maybe I use an infographic to show it. How do I kind of connect things? Designing activities is what we've talked about. Creating questions is a very big part of storyboarding. You have to create questions for your learning, like Rochelle was saying, thought-provoking questions. You create questions, in between to make sure that people are keeping focused. You have to create questions for assessments. You have to create question banks for assessment sometimes because people may not get it right the first time. So then they have to go on taking it. So you need many questions in your question bank. Creating good questions is an art form. If you master that, honestly, you'll be in an excellent place as an instructional designer. I know like till date, I know instructional designers with lots of experience who still falter on questions. Creating good questions, good distractors. The thing about questions is that you can make your question and you can make your correct answer. That's all fine. But now you have to create 3 incorrect answers because you can't just ask them what is the answer because it's online, right? So it has to be a selection. How do you make 3 other options that are plausible but not correct? That is where the art lies, honestly, with questions. And then the other thing that now a lot of instructional designers are doing, it was not so much in my time when I started off, but now it's very much a required skill, is actually developing the modules in authoring tools. So authoring tools are now commonly available. So it's like, if you think about it, like making a PPT or using Word, but it directly converts it into screens and into, maybe pages that can be deployed in different ways. So actually putting the content in there, seeing what are the different options to me in terms of presenting my content, creating activities, using visuals, finding photos, finding icons that could work to kind of, make your content easier to understand, bring out, a different perspective, maybe also just, like make it less monotonous overall. Those are all part of the storyboarding process. So that's what storyboarding is. Any questions on storyboarding as the first task? So this is actually when you start off in instructional design, this is where you start off. So any questions on this?
Lisa, one question, Ramya here.
Yeah, hi Ram.
You spoke about authoring tools.
Yes.
Are there any tools which are like the most used ones? Because
Yes.
I've always read about I think Adobe Captivate. That is one which I usually read about everywhere.
Yeah. So Captivate, not so much anymore, I would say. Captivate was, I mean, the strength of Captivate lies in creating simulations. You know, when you're teaching people how to use a tool and then you record the different steps, that is the main strength of Captivate. So Captivate is a little outdated now. I would say for sure Articulate, Storyline, and Rise. I actually really like Rise. It's a very easy authoring tool to use. It's like working in Word, literally. It's as simple as that. And you can put your images in. It's responsive, so the screen changes if you're looking at it on a mobile versus if you're looking at it on your laptop or a desktop. And it's very easy to use. So I would say Articulate for sure. Start with Rise. Again, I've written it in my takeaways.
Okay, thanks, sis.
So, okay. And moving forward, I'm going to go a little bit more quickly now because we're going to the more complex level of instructional design. So once I kind of like had some experience with storyboarding, I got to graduate to content outlines. And this is what I was waiting for actually, but after a little while of storyboarding, because it was very exciting. So content outlines is when you get to kind of deal with this at a higher level. You kind of get to make the decisions. What is the content I want to include? How much of it? How should it kind of flow? Should I, where do I start? How do I explain it? Should I have an introduction? How would it flow for me? Just a second. So for example, a project that I worked on was prevention of sexual harassment training. So this is a very common topic. I mean, everybody needs to train on it. Everybody knows what sexual harassment is now. With the Me Too movement, it's quite common. But if you have to create a training on that for corporate employees, what is it that you need to cover? So how do you go about it? So I looked at it. I said, okay, now I have the guidelines over here. I have, the manager's responsibilities. I have, okay, that there is this hotline that you can call or this, place that you can send information to. But how do you make this an effective training experience? So the first question I asked is, who am I hitting as my target audience? So am I hitting the people who may be already kind of harassing people and telling them, no, you should not do that? So I said, I mean, technically, mostly people might already know. It's a question of, okay, you want to put it out there that these are the consequences and you can get fired and you can even get sued and so on. But how much of information do you need? Then I said, maybe so we want to hit the victims and say, okay, yes, you should definitely raise it. But what we decided to do was we decided that let's focus our attention on the bystanders. So people who might see this happening, but might be like, it's not my business. Oh, I don't know if this is actually a problem. It seems a little odd to me, but how do I know? If I can kind of convince that population, if I can kind of help them to understand what it is that sexual harassment looks like and how this works, then I feel like I would be making a big difference. So at this point in time, I got to design things. I got to figure out how much of content, what is the content coverage? Let's use scenarios. Let's actually show them situations of, what sexual harassment looks like so that they can then identify it when they see it in real life, or they'll be like, yes, okay, this is what makes sense. So that's what your content outline looks like, where you can design the structure, the strategies, the overall way of training. And then the last level, which is very wide, and you can do this for years in so many different ways, is when you get into designing instructional approaches itself. So over here, you're kind of considering all the different facets of learning, all the different aspects of what you are kind of need to do to make that learning accessible to your learners. What is your technology? Who is your audience? What is the content that's available to you? What are your outcomes that you need to achieve? What do people need to do differently at the end of the training? And then you're coming up with overall solutions to see what can you get to. So one small example over here was again, one of my first projects where I got to do an instructional approach and I was very excited about it. So over here, the client came to us and they said, we want to create a training on time management for insurance agents. So they were a company an insurance company, and they had these agents. These agents are kind of freelance. They get a commission. And they said that people are struggling with this. We want to create a training on time management. So I said, okay. I said, what is it that we want to teach them? What are the effective time management principles? So they said, that's the problem. We don't really know. You can't really tell someone that this is exactly the thing that you need to do, because time management is fluid, right? I mean, what might work for one person may not be the right thing for another. What might work for one day might not work for another day. So I said, okay, how do I even go about this? How do I create a time management training when you're not willing to give me any specific rules to give them? So what we did was we interviewed a lot of experienced insurance professionals. And we said, how do you go about things? What are techniques that you use? And then we flipped the script. So instead of saying, this is what you need to do, we did it question-based. So we said, okay, this is a situation, your first meeting is at 9 a.m. in the morning. When do you come into office? And you had different options. I come in at 8:55 a.m. I come in at 7 a.m., whatever. And then we took their answer and we said, and we had the feedback coming in from an experienced insurance professional. So the guy would be like, or the woman would be like, okay, good to know what your approach is. I like to come in like 45 minutes in advance. It gives me the chance to get my cup of coffee, but also go through my notes for the day. I can orient myself to what I'm planning for the day. Then I can, I give myself 10 minutes before the meeting to quickly, recap on who the customer is, what their needs are, so that I can go in prepared. It really throws me if I get in just in time for the meeting. So it was not strict guidelines. It was guidance coming from, an experienced professional. And we did a lot of these kind of scenarios that could give them tips. So rather than direct, you must do this, it was more like sharing of experience and tips and guidelines. So that's what you're doing when you're coming up with an instructional approach. You're considering all your different frameworks, constraints, what you need to achieve, and you're trying to come up with the best solution. This is really problem solving. Essentially, it's problem solving. You have all these problems. How do you kind of figure out a solution that will hit everything? So that's what designing instructional approaches is. So that was my overall journey. I'm not getting into team management and, like consulting and then starting our own business, because that's like a whole other conversation. But as an instructional designer, this is what your journey would look like primarily, starting with storyboarding, moving to content outlines where you get to design the structure and outcome, and then moving finally to instructional approaches. And that can go to all different levels where you can be designing for really big programs in the long run. And now we come to the actual, actionables that I was asked about. So this is what I've put down as very initial steps. I haven't really prescribed like signing up for an instructional design, degree and so on right now, partially because I don't have one to recommend in India primarily. But if you just want to try this out a little bit, here are a few items that you could address. This is what I would prescribe at an overall level. So go through it and tell me if you have questions over here.
Lisa, just one question on these tools and theories. While you've mentioned the names of these theories, are they paid tools? Are they paid resources?
So
is it freely available?
The theories are completely like, they're just theories, right? And models that are used. So, they're not really paid models. They're very like normally used now. And unless you're coding them, which I don't know, I haven't thought about it, but we use them regularly. So you just Google it And I mean, you have to figure out what are the right places to go to. But if you can Google it and you can learn a lot of these theories, there's a lot of information out there. And the tools are paid. Articulate is really expensive actually, but you can sign up for a trial subscription. I think they give you like 1 month or 2 months, which should be enough time to get your hand in. So you sign up for a trial subscription. Make sure that you have time when you sign up for it to kind of, really explore, and then play with it. Try making, modules, see how it goes, tweak things. What you should do is actually make, a couple of modules. Start with Rise. If you can get to storyline, perfect. And keep them as showcases. When you're applying for a job or you're looking for a role, you can always say that this is my capability and these are my showcases of things that I've created as well. So this is a very initial kind of like starter guide over here. There are a lot of things that a lot of different people prescribe, but this is my 101 of instructional design starter guide. Somebody wanted to go back to the previous slide. Okay, let me go back to the previous slide.
Lisa?
Yes.
A question for you, Joms here.
Yeah, hi,
Hi. So transitioning from being a trainer to instructional design, do you think creating a portfolio, especially in India, is really important? Because everywhere, whenever I go through job descriptions on LinkedIn, it just seems like they need people with 5 or 8 years of experience, which I don't have in instructional design.
That's true.
So do you think creating a portfolio will help, like you suggested?
It depends on where you're looking for a job. So I would say, so there are different areas that you can focus on. So one is your e-learning industry, what I would say e-learning industry. So over there, like these companies, this is my part, work for corporate customers. And over there, instructional design is a core skill set. So they don't really expect development as much as the content and the learning expertise. So over there, if you find a fresher role, they will train you as well.
Okay. So, that makes sense.
But if you're looking for something in L&D or where you would have like a training team and you would have 1 instructional designer or 2 instructional designers, at that point, they absolutely need you to be able to work with whatever authoring tool they are working with. So what I would suggest at that point is that it's important to say, okay, I am able to use authoring tools. These are the ones I'm familiar with, but I can also figure out the authoring tool that you are using in maybe, if you have a time frame that would sound more, confidence inspiring. So in a frame of like 2 weeks, you can walk them through your experience. Say that, with Articulate Rise, I am self-taught. I used the tools, I used the, tutorials on the site itself, and this is what output I was able to develop. I would also be able to learn how to use a different tool given, access to the tool as well as, their help section tutorials. But of course you have to do that, but you do it with Articulate first with Rise, and then you will be able to transfer that skill set to other places. Or you get a job in the e-learning side of things where, they would definitely train you then.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks for the suggestion.
Sure.
Really, really amazing session, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Rochelle wants to know about websites she could refer to for learning about ID. Oh God, this is a very loaded question, Rochelle, because I've tried and there are different things. So let me, there are a few that I've been following, but they're a little bit advanced, but they might work for you. Let me send you a list in a bit. There are a few that are not directly ID as well. There is this one site that I follow where they talk about different types of like models, basically your mind models. And I find that's very useful to translate into ID. There are a couple of ID ones also that I follow. So I'll send you a list, but mine will be thoda sa advanced. I haven't done
Lisa.
in a long time.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for something with instructional approaches because that's something I am working towards right now.
Done.
So yeah, it would be very helpful. Thank
I
you.
will send you. Who wanted to go to this slide? Was that? Vikas, any questions on this slide that you want? This is the slide that you wanted?
Yeah, Lisa, this one. Basically, I just wanted to go through the maybe these talks about analysis.
Okay. Okay. So I'm not going to this in a lot of detail because I'm looking at this as an instructional design 101 session. And this is again a whole other like world, but I just wanted to put down a few thoughts here.
No worries.
Suraj, you had a question?
Hi, Lisa. I just wanted to go to the previous slide of that which you displayed before
This one?
because I just the previous one. Yeah. So I just wanted to understand like how storyboarding is different when it comes to content outlines because as a content developer, people are expecting me to go ahead and create storyboards which actually says whose audience or what are the different outcomes that is going to come up. So storyboard covers everything over there. So how it is different? I'm getting a little bit confused with these two topics.
Okay. So then this may be my experience again being in, a field where this is your core skill set. So it is broken down into chunks. So for us, the way that we do it is that storyboarding, it's just your script. So if you're creating a workshop, if you're creating an online training, it's just the content that comes in there. And this is a separate step. So the content outline is a separate step. If you have no one to make the content outline, then you will have to do both. So for us, because we have levels, we start with somebody at storyboarding, and when they're familiar with it, then we graduate them to content outlines, because at that point you need to have more experience. You need to understand, how am I structuring my content? What are my gaps? You need to talk to your subject matter experts, all of that. But both of them, so it actually works like this. Ulta, if you look at the process, it starts with your overall instructional approach. How am I approaching it? What is the technology I'm using? What am I doing? Then you create your content outline, which is the structure of my training, my content analysis, how much of content, what is the depth of content I'm covering. And then based on that, you make your storyboard, which is actually, chunking your content, explaining
Exactly.
content. But from a career perspective, it starts with storyboarding and then you go up the value chain.
Okay. Got it, Lisa. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. So we have 4 minutes left.
Hey, Lisa, I have one quick question. I've seen this research quite much. In India, do we have any formal master program specifically for learning and development, or let's say?
There are. I don't know what they are, unfortunately, because when I joined, again, it was a very open-ended field, but there are more programs now. So what I'm thinking is, if you're not interested, if you all, share your email addresses, this is stuff that I also need to put together and I also need to figure out, but I haven't yet. When I do have information, I can share with you all.
Okay.
So as a conclusion, for people who are looking for an entry into this field. So Julian and I have recently opened our own company, and we're in the process of kind of building our team and also doing work for a couple of customers. So right now what we're doing is we do plan to run a 6-month paid internship program where we do not expect people to have experience in the instructional design, but we do expect them to have the base skill set that we're looking for. So there would be an interview process. And so the 6-month internship program, after which we'll see where it goes. If people would like to continue with us and it's working well, or if somebody is still happy about this field and wants to look for a job, we can even refer them to people. If anybody is interested in applying, you can send us your resume, and I would like a write-up as well explaining why you're interested in instructional design, and we can, kind of take the process forward.
Before all of you guys go, I wanted to share a little bit about the Content Collective, and we've got several new people, and I'm pretty sure they're content creators, either designers or content writers or even L&D professionals create a lot of content. So why did we create this community, and what is really the purpose and the reason for doing what we're doing? So I'm not going to go into presentation mode. I'm just going to share this as it is. So we felt that content today is so widespread and so common that it gets created for everybody for everyday use, but the content creator is forgotten. So that's why we thought we'd create a space where content creators can come together and grow collectively. And we want to move forward and move the content ecosystem forward, and that's why we created this community. And we created this space where people can interact, learn, and share. And how we're doing this is by having sessions like this. So we have these meetup sessions once every month. Today we have Lisa. Next month we have something on creativity and how to have creative writing hacks and creative designing hacks. So we have somebody who's experienced in that who's going to talk about it. And then we also have a monthly newsletter that we share. We share with people who have registered to us in the community. So if you'd like to be a part of the community, there would be a registration link that you'll see on all of our social media channels or even in the email that was shared with you. So please do register, because that would give you access to our newsletter and even other emails and connections, that information that we keep sharing. What it really means for you as a content creator is that it allows you to build a very real network. It's not something that we are trying to force on anybody. It's not something that is, and we know that where we're dealing with a lot of introverts here. So getting introverts to network is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now. But we know that they will do it in their own time and at their own will. So we are not pushy about doing things. Like even in this session, if you wanted to ask a question, you're open to ask a question. If you want to speak, it's totally up to you. You can be on listening mode, or you can be on talking mode, or you can be on just look and see what's happening mode also. So the whole idea is that we want people to benefit from it in some way, learn from others. And that's why Lisa was sharing her experience and her and what is she doing as an instructional designer. And content, like I said, is so vast that we can pretty much go on doing sessions like this for the next 10 years and we still fall short. And obviously to collaborate and grow as a community and as content creators. And also the pandemic has led to people getting very, very fragmented and working in silos. And content creation becomes this thing that content karo, do content, make content. But people don't realize that there is a process, there's a energy that goes into creating the content. And sometimes content creators also need that energy boost or that shot in the arm. So we hope to do that. We have 3 simple rules for members. But you need to listen before you speak, and that's just how we are as people. That's why we want that as one of the simplest rules. We want you to either get help or be able to help and support others. So it's not only about just being there and being a passive member, but also seeing if you can help others in different ways, in whatever way you can. And most importantly, being real. So we don't, we're not into fufa. We say it as it is. We are as real as you get, and we want you to make real connections and have real interactions. And that's pretty much what we ask for every member. So if you are interested, we are on social media. We're not on Instagram, but we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and we have a Slack channel as well. So if you want to join on Slack, you're welcome to do that. We do share job posts and job openings as well. So Lisa's internship or the Vongeyer internship will also be shared with the rest of the community, so that others also benefit. And if you have any queries, any thing that you really want to know or need help in the content space, you can always reach out to us. We're more than happy to connect you to the right people if we are not able to help you, or provide whatever help and support we can. So I know we've overshot by a couple of minutes, but I thought it was important for people to know about the Content Collective. So yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining. And
organizing the session, Reuben and Bhumika.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lisa. It was a great session.